Hedy Lamarr was often called the most beautiful woman in the world, but she was far more than just a pretty face. Not only did she enjoy a dazzling Hollywood career, but she also reinvented herself as an inventor, pioneering groundbreaking technology that would later lay the foundation for Wi-Fi. With achievements like that, you'd think she wouldn't have time for a scandalous personal life. But behind her brilliance and beauty, there was a darker, more complicated side to her story. Hedy Lamarr, the glamorous actress and brilliant innovator, was born Hedwig Eva Marie Kiesler in Vienna in 1914. As the only daughter in an upper-class family, she grew up in privilege. Though both her parents were Jewish by birth, they raised her as a Christian. From a young age, she was certain of one thing: she wanted to act, and nothing was going to stand in her way. When her parents sent her to a strict Swiss boarding school, Lamarr wasn't having it. Refusing to be confined, she made a daring escape and returned to Vienna. It was a bold move, but one that set the tone for the rest of her life. While other teenage girls were focused on school and socializing, Lamarr had her sights set on stardom. She forged permission slips to sneak away from class and spend her days staking out film studios, hoping to land a role. While her peers were getting ready for high school dances, 15-year-old Lamarr was already attending glamorous parties alongside some of the biggest names in European cinema. By the time she was 18, she had taken an even bigger leap, moving to Berlin to fully immerse herself in the film industry. It didn't take long before she made waves. Lamarr's big break came at just 18 years old, but it didn't come without controversy. She landed a starring role in Ecstasy, a film so scandalous that it caused an international uproar. It was the first non-pornographic movie to depict not only a sex scene, but also a female orgasm, something that had never been seen in mainstream cinema before. But the real shock came when reports surfaced that Lamarr had actually been only 17 when she filmed the now infamous scene. The backlash was immediate. Audiences were scandalized. Censors banned the film in multiple countries. And suddenly, Lamarr's name was at the center of a firestorm. Was she really the provocative starlet the media made her out to be? Or was there more to the story? When Lamarr accepted the role in Ecstasy, her parents were uneasy about it. They insisted that one of them accompany her to the film set to protect her. Not wanting to appear unprofessional, she reassured them that a trusted stage actor she had previously worked with would act as her chaperone instead. But there was another reason she didn't want her parents on set, one far more personal. At the time, she was secretly involved with a lover in Prague, where the movie was being filmed. She had no idea just how much trouble she was about to get herself into. Arriving on set full of excitement, Lamarr was completely unprepared for what awaited her. The director demanded that she strip down for a scene in which her character skinny dips. She refused, standing her ground and threatening to walk off the film entirely. But the director was ready for this. He warned her that if she quit, she would be held financially responsible for the cost of the scenes already filmed. Reluctantly, she agreed to stay, but only under the condition that the film would use distant, barely visible shots of her body. She had no idea she was being deceived. The director had hidden a telephoto lens in the bushes, capturing close-up shots without her consent. It wasn't until she saw the finished film that she realized the full extent of the betrayal. She was devastated, but the humiliation wasn't over yet. Being tricked by a manipulative director was bad enough. Having her first film banned in multiple countries was worse. But nothing could compare to the mortification of sitting in a theater with her parents as they watched it all unfold on screen. Lamarr had tried to convince them that Ecstasy was artistic, but when they saw the nude scenes and, even worse, the controversial orgasm scene, they were furious. Without saying a word, they stormed out of the theater. Lamarr thought her career had just ended before it had even begun, but fate had other plans for her. When Lamarr returned to Vienna, she landed a role playing Empress Elizabeth in a stage production. The performance brought her widespread attention, but not all of it was welcome. Among her admirers was a man named Fritz Mandl, a wealthy and powerful arms manufacturer from an influential family. He was older, already divorced, and deeply involved in fascist politics. Lamarr had no interest in him, but that didn't stop him from pursuing her relentlessly. Mandl used every resource at his disposal to win her over, showering her with gifts and attention. At first she resisted, but over time she found herself drawn to his intelligence, power, and undeniable charm. Eventually she gave in to his advances, and before long they were engaged. Like any young bride, Lamarr dreamed of a fairy tale wedding and a picture-perfect life. What she got instead was a nightmare. Once they were married, Mandl's true nature emerged. He was possessive and controlling, treating Lamarr as if she were one of his prized possessions rather than a wife. In a display of jealousy and dominance, he attempted to erase her past, using his wealth and influence to track down and destroy every existing copy of ecstasy. He didn't stop there. He had her servants spy on her, listening in on phone calls to ensure she never spoke of acting. If he overheard words like pictures or films, he flew into a rage. Lamarr had sacrificed her career for this marriage, but she soon realized she had given up far more than she had bargained for. Desperate to escape what she called her prison of gold, Lamarr attempted to flee twice, but both times Mandl's power and constant surveillance stopped her before she could get away. Then, in the midst of her misery, tragedy struck. Her beloved father, the man who had encouraged her curiosity and intellect, suffered a fatal heart attack. Devastated, Lamarr sank into deep grief, and her already suffocating marriage became even more unbearable. For years she withdrew from the world, dressing only in black and avoiding mirrors as if she couldn't bear to see her own reflection. She isolated herself, unable to engage with anyone, trapped in a haze of mourning. But eventually, something inside her shifted. She realized that if she didn't act soon, she might remain trapped forever. Lamarr knew that escaping Mandl wouldn't be easy. As an arms dealer with deep political connections, he frequently hosted meetings with diplomats and world leaders. She began listening closely, picking up valuable information during their discussions. Her reasoning was simple. If she could gather enough damaging secrets, she might be able to use them as leverage, ensuring that Mandl wouldn't dare drag her back if she managed to flee. But blackmail alone wouldn't be enough to physically escape his grasp. The widely accepted version of her escape is as thrilling as any Hollywood movie. According to Lamarr, she carefully observed one of the maids in Mandl's household, noticing that they were of similar height. One night she supposedly drugged the maid, dressed in her uniform, and slipped out of Mandl's heavily guarded estate. From there she boarded a train to Paris and immediately filed for divorce. It's a dramatic story, but as she later admitted, it wasn't entirely true. Lamarr understood the power of a good narrative, and the idea of a runaway bride fleeing a controlling husband only added to her mystique. At a time when divorce was still controversial, this version of events painted her as a daring and independent woman, earning her admiration in Hollywood. Another popular rumor suggested that she tricked Mandl into letting her wear all her finest jewelry out to dinner, only to slip away through a back exit, vanishing into the night with a small fortune hanging around her neck. Even this story, though, was only partly accurate. In reality, her escape was less dramatic, but no less courageous. Years later, she revealed that she simply packed her belongings, clothes, furs, and jewelry, waiting for the right moment. As soon as Mandel left on a business trip, she seized her chance and left Austria for good, fully aware that she was burning every bridge behind her. From that point on, she and Mandel rarely crossed paths again, though he did occasionally send her money. None of it mattered. She was finally free. After a year spent mourning her father and enduring an oppressive marriage, Lamarr had reached her breaking point. Taking only what she could carry, she fled, determined to start a new life. Her ultimate goal was Hollywood, but before she could make it there, she made an important stop in London, where she met the man who would change her fate forever. At the same time, Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM, was also in London. Mayer was the man behind the success of some of the most legendary actresses of the era, including Greta Garbo and Norma Shearer. However, the only thing he knew about Lamarr was ecstasy, and the scandal surrounding it had left him unimpressed. When she expressed interest in working for MGM, he made her an offer, but it was insultingly low. He was willing to bring her to Hollywood, but only at a mere $125 a week. Mayer's perception of Lamarr had been clouded by the scandal surrounding ecstasy. He assumed she was desperate for a fresh start and would jump at any offer, no matter how low. But Lamarr knew her worth. With her collection of jewels and furs providing financial security, she had the luxury of waiting for the right opportunity. Confident that she could change his mind, she rejected his offer and devised a plan to make him see her differently. She discovered that Mayer and his wife were sailing to the United States aboard the luxury liner Normandy. Seizing the opportunity, she booked herself a ticket on the same voyage. For days, Mayer had no choice but to observe her intelligence, charm, and elegance up close. By the time the ship reached America, he had completely changed his tune, no longer viewing her as a desperate actress with a tarnished reputation. He increased his offer to $500 a week, 4 times his original proposal. During the voyage, Margaret Mayer helped her choose a new stage name to distance herself from the controversy of ecstasy. They settled on Hedy Lamarr, inspired by silent film star Barbara Lamarr. It was an ironic choice. Barbara had been a cautionary tale of Hollywood excess, dying at just 29 from addiction. Though not the most uplifting inspiration, the name gave Lamarr the fresh start she needed. Once she arrived in Hollywood, Lamarr wasted no time adapting. She worked on perfecting her English and attended lavish parties, mingling with industry elites like Howard Hughes. Within 6 months, she landed her first role in an MGM film, proving that her gamble had paid off. But just as her career was taking off, devastating news arrived from Austria. Germany had annexed her homeland. Her mother, who was born Jewish, was now in grave danger. Lamarr, determined to save her, used her salary to arrange for her mother's safe passage to the United States. As war loomed over Europe, Lamarr prepared to make her major screen debut. Her first Hollywood film, Algiers, turned her into an overnight sensation. The moment she appeared on screen, audiences were mesmerized. Rumors even spread that theatergoers gasped at the sight of her. She was now officially a star, but despite her beauty and talent, the right roles weren't always easy to come by. With unexpected downtime between projects, she found herself drawn to an unusual hobby, tinkering with gadgets. Inventing wasn't Lamarr's only distraction. She also had a steady stream of admirers. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, she shocked everyone by announcing her marriage to Gene Markey, a screenwriter and producer who had recently divorced actress Joan Bennett. Even Lamarr seemed taken aback by how quickly it had all happened, but beneath the surface there was more to the story. Around the same time she met Markey, a baby boy was born at a local hospital. Without hesitation, Lamarr decided to adopt him, naming him James. Marrying Markey provided the child with an instant father, and in Lamarr's mind she was creating the perfect family. She envisioned a life where she could have it all: love, career, and motherhood. However, reality didn't quite match her dream. Marky gave the baby his last name, but that was about the extent of his involvement. Both he and Lamarr were deeply absorbed in their careers, but she bore the responsibility of raising James on her own. Meanwhile, as the world edged closer to war, Lamarr became increasingly disturbed by reports of innocent lives being lost, especially the tragic deaths of civilians, including children, at sea. It was a turning point for her. Determined to contribute to something greater than Hollywood, Lamarr decided to use her talents in a different way. Though she had never formally studied advanced science, she had an instinct for problem-solving and a sharp, analytical mind. And thanks to her past life in Austria, she possessed knowledge that most people didn't. Drawing from what she had overheard during her marriage to arms dealer Fritz Mandl, Lamarr recalled discussions about military weaponry and radio signals. She reached out to composer George Antheil, and together they developed a revolutionary idea: a frequency-hopping system designed to prevent enemy forces from jamming radio-controlled torpedoes. Confident that their invention could help the Allies, they patented the technology, believing it would be a crucial wartime innovation. But when they presented it to the U.S. Navy, they were met with outright rejection. Officials dismissed the concept and, to make matters worse, seized the patent, classifying it as alien property due to Lamarr's Austrian background. It was a crushing blow, but Lamarr refused to be discouraged. If Hollywood had taught her anything, it was how to persevere when no one believed in her. Lamarr shifted her focus to selling war bonds, but at the same time, she quietly filed for divorce from Jean Markey. Their whirlwind romance had faded almost as quickly as it had begun, leaving behind a marriage that felt more like a formality than a partnership. Court documents later revealed just how distant they had become. Over the course of 18 months, they had spent only 4 nights together. Following her divorce, Lamarr found herself drawn to the Hollywood Canteen, a social club where servicemen gathered before being deployed. It was there that she ran into actor John Loder. They had met years earlier, but at the time, he had been married. Now single, he seemed like the perfect match: tall, older, and most importantly, kind to her son, James. By this point, Lamarr had learned a thing or two from her past relationships. From Markey, she realized that time together mattered more than grand gestures. From Mandl, she had learned never to lose her independence. Determined not to repeat past mistakes, she made a bold move on the eve of her wedding to Loder. She handed him a bill for $350, about $5,550 today, to cover the cost of the dinners he had eaten at her home over the past month. It was her way of making it clear that she would never again be financially dependent on a man. For a time, everything seemed to be falling into place. Lamarr's career experienced a resurgence. Loder proved to be a supportive husband, and he even adopted James, strengthening their family bond. 2 years into their marriage, Lamarr gave birth to a daughter, Denise. Life appeared picture perfect. But as always, trouble was just around the corner. Not long after Denise's birth, Lamarr began suffering from chronic pain that doctors insisted was entirely psychosomatic. Seeking answers, she traveled frequently to Boston for psychoanalysis, uncovering deep-seated traumas that had haunted her for years. She was forced to relive painful memories, from childhood encounters to a teenage assault. For 2 years, she underwent intensive therapy, confronting the past in ways she never had before. And when it was over, she was ready for yet another reinvention. Years earlier, she had escaped Mandl with nothing. Now Lamarr made another daring move. She walked away from her decade-long contract with MGM and her professional ties to Louis B. mayor. Feeling stronger after therapy, she also made a deeply personal decision. She wanted another child. In 1947, she gave birth to her third child, Anthony Loder, believing that with him, her family would finally feel complete. What seemed like a picture-perfect family quickly fell apart. Lamarr filed for divorce from John Loder, citing an unusual reason. She claimed he had a habit of dozing off whenever they spoke, even if the most beautiful woman in the world was standing right in front of him. Whether it was boredom or sheer exhaustion, the judge granted her request and Lamarr walked away without looking back. Amid all the drastic changes in her life, leaving MGM, divorcing Loder, and confronting her personal struggles, Lamarr also distanced herself from her adopted son, James. She sent him to boarding school, and as the years passed, their contact dwindled. By the time he turned 11, they barely spoke, and during school breaks, he stayed with a teacher's family. When Lamarr found out, she took it as a personal betrayal, cut ties with him entirely, and rarely spoke to him again. Despite her turbulent personal life, her career surged once more in 1949 when she starred in Samson and Delilah, a massive box office hit that put her back at the top in Hollywood. But success came at a cost. Her grueling work schedule left her drained. Longing for something more stable, she took a vacation to Mexico, hoping to find a love story that would finally last. Instead, she met Teddy Stauffer, a man who, like her first husband, had a dangerously jealous streak. At first, Stauffer, a former bandleader turned hotelier, swept Lamarr off her feet. He was charming and sophisticated, and for a brief moment it seemed like she had found what she was looking for. But before long, his possessiveness and unpredictable temper emerged. Even so, for reasons only she understood, Lamarr agreed to marry him. The marriage was doomed from the start, and like so many before it, it didn't last. As her relationships unraveled, Lamarr's love life took a dark and disturbing turn. In her memoirs, she wrote about an unnamed actor who she disguised under the name Sam, whose obsession with her became terrifying. His possessiveness escalated into something deeply unsettling, and one night, he took things to an unimaginable extreme. Sam's fixation reached its breaking point when he presented her with a life-size doll made in her exact likeness. What followed was even more horrifying. He forced Lamarr to sit and watch as he performed intimate acts with the doll, refusing to let her leave until it was over. Her personal life had officially descended into a waking nightmare. Looking for a fresh start and an escape from Hollywood's twisted affairs, Lamarr decided to take control of her own destiny by producing a film. Several financiers expressed interest, though many had ulterior motives. For the first time in years, she seemed to have found stability. She later described their marriage as one of mutual love and respect, admitting that while they had their fair share of arguments, their bond always remained strong. But that harmony didn't last. After 6 years together, their relationship unraveled, and they found themselves in divorce court. Lee accused Lamarr of having violent outbursts, while she claimed he was both physically abusive and financially stingy. By the time their marriage collapsed, she had already returned to Beverly Hills with her children, once again facing life as a single mother. However, fate had one more devastating test in store for her. One afternoon, while Lamarr was napping, the sound of her doorbell ringing frantically jolted her awake. A panicked neighbor stood at the door, delivering horrifying news. Her young son, Tony, had been struck by a car outside. She rushed to the hospital, where doctors fought to save his life. She refused to leave his side, spending days in the hospital as he battled to recover. Miraculously, Tony pulled through, defying the worst expectations. But even as she celebrated her son's survival, she still had to deal with her messy divorce in Texas. Exhausted from the ordeal, Lamarr made a critical mistake. She skipped the Houston divorce proceedings, sending a legal proxy in her place. Worse, she had fired all 3 of her attorneys, leaving herself unrepresented. The judge was unimpressed by her absence. Scrambling to fix the situation, she quickly found a new lawyer, Louis J. Boys, to handle her case in Los Angeles. But Boys didn't remain just her attorney. He became her husband. Lamarr married Boys, making him her 6th husband, but their union quickly soured. 2 years later, she filed for divorce, accusing him of squandering $500,000 of her personal fortune. She also alleged that he had physically abused her, both in public and private. In court, her son Tony supported her claims. This time, Lamarr had finally had enough. After years of failed marriages, she swore she was finished with matrimony for good. Lamarr filled her post-Hollywood years with a variety of pursuits, one of the most sensational being the release of her memoir, Ecstasy and Me, 1966. Packed with scandalous stories and even a full transcript of a session with her psychoanalyst, the book shocked the public, offering an unfiltered look into the life of a woman who had always been shrouded in mystery. But just as quickly as she had revealed all, she turned against the book. Lamarr sued her publisher, claiming much of the content had been fabricated by ghostwriter Leo Guild. The controversy didn't end there. Soon after, a magazine writer took legal action against her, accusing her of plagiarizing entire sections from his articles. The memoir that was supposed to tell her story had instead become yet another source of scandal. Her troubles didn't stop with lawsuits. In the years following her retirement from acting, Lamarr found herself on the wrong side of the law when she was arrested for shoplifting. The trial made national headlines, and though she pleaded not guilty, the damage to her reputation was done. Years later, in 1991, she faced yet another shoplifting charge, further cementing her place in the tabloids. Meanwhile, her more respectable passion, inventing, remained largely overshadowed by her personal drama. While her frequency-hopping technology was undoubtedly her most significant contribution, Lamarr had a number of other inventions in the works. Some were creative, others downright bizarre. She designed a tissue box that stored used tissues separately and even attempted to develop a powdered tablet that could turn water into a soda-like drink. Dubbed the Cola Bouillon Cube, the product never made it to market, likely because it tasted more like Alka-Seltzer than Coca-Cola. Not all ideas were destined for success, but her most brilliant invention finally got the recognition it deserved. In the 1960s, decades after she and George Antheil had patented their frequency hopping system, the U.S. Navy quietly adopted an updated version of it for use in ships. Tragically, Antheil had already passed away by the time their technology proved its worth. Once its significance became undeniable, Lamarr was showered with awards, finally acknowledged as a pioneer whose work laid the foundation for modern wireless communication, including Wi-Fi. Despite the long-overdue recognition, Lamarr struggled with something she couldn't reinvent, her own reflection. Having been labeled the most beautiful woman in the world for most of her life, aging was not something she accepted easily. She turned to plastic surgery, often offering her own inventive suggestions to surgeons. While some of her ideas became standard techniques in cosmetic procedures, others went terribly wrong, leaving her increasingly dissatisfied with the face that had once captivated the world. On January 19th, she passed away peacefully at home at the age of 85. Honoring her wishes, her son Tony returned to Vienna, the city of her birth, and scattered her ashes in the forest. It was a quiet and fitting end to a life filled with extraordinary highs and devastating lows. But even after her death, shocking secrets about her past continued to surface. One of the biggest revelations involved her complicated and distant relationship with her adopted son, James. By the time he reached his teenage years, their bond had all but disappeared, and they were nearly estranged. Nothing could have prepared him for what he would uncover after her passing. In 2001, a year after Lamarr's death, James found his original birth certificate, and with it, the truth that had been kept from him his entire life. He had not been adopted as a baby, as he had always believed. Instead, he was Lamarr's biological son, born in secret when she was younger. Lamarr's third marriage to John Loder had been, in part, an attempt to cover up this long-buried secret. In 1938, while Loder was still married, he and Lamarr had an affair that resulted in a pregnancy. Fearing the impact on her career, Lamarr concealed the birth of her son, James Lamarr Loder. Years later, in an ironic twist, Loder adopted James without ever revealing that he was actually his biological father. The truth was hidden from James for decades. When Lamarr passed away, she left most of her estate, worth $3.3 million, to her two youngest children, Denise and Anthony, while James was excluded entirely. After learning the truth about his parentage, he filed a legal claim to receive his share of the inheritance. He insisted that he and Lamarr had reconciled during her final decade, though his half-siblings disputed this. In the end, James settled for $50,000, a small fraction of what his mother had left behind. Hedy Lamarr was a woman ahead of her time, both in Hollywood and in the world of science. While she left behind an unforgettable legacy on screen, her greatest contribution was the technology we use every day, even though she never received the recognition or financial reward she deserved. Her story is one of brilliance, beauty, and tragedy, but today, the world is finally giving her the credit she was denied in her lifetime. What do you think of Hedy Lamarr's incredible life and legacy? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.